Admiral Park stood on the bridge of her ship and looked at the stars. The research vessel Horizon's Edge was small compared to the great ships of the Galactic Concord, but it was hers. She had commanded it for 15 years, exploring the edges of known space where no one else wanted to go. The year was 2347. Humanity had spread to 12 star systems since leaving Earth 300 years ago. They had met other species, thousands of them. The galaxy was full of life, full of civilizations that had existed for millions of years, and all of them looked at humans the same way, like children, like newcomers who did not belong at the adult table. The Galactic Concord was an alliance of 4,000 species. They had maintained peace for 6 million years. Their ships were beautiful and powerful. Their technology was beyond anything humans could understand. And they tolerated humanity the way a person might tolerate a small insect that wandered into their home. Not worth killing, not worth noticing. Had learned to ignore the looks, the whispers, the way alien diplomats would speak slowly to human representatives as if talking to someone who was not very smart. She focused on her work. She explored, she mapped, she discovered. Today she was in the void. The void was a region of space that all conquered species avoided. When it asked why, she received no answer, just silence, just changed subjects, just warnings that humans should not go there. This made want to go there very much. Lieutenant Lee walked onto the bridge. He was young, barely 30 years old, with a mind that never stopped working. He was the ship's expert on alien history and ancient civilizations. He had studied every dead species the Concord had ever recorded. He dreamed of finding something new. "Admiral," he said, "we are detecting something strange." Turned to face him. "Define strange." "An energy signature, coming from the collapsed star ahead. It should not be there. Nothing should be there. The star died 2 million years ago." Felt something stir in her chest. It was the feeling she got when she was about to discover something important. She had learned to trust this feeling. "Take us closer," she ordered. The Horizon's Edge moved forward. The crew was nervous. They had all heard the warnings about the void, but they trusted their admiral. She had never led them wrong. As they approached the collapsed star, the sensors began to show something impossible. There was a structure orbiting the dead star. Not a station, not a moon, something artificial, something built. "How big is it?" asked. His face went pale. He checked the readings 3 times before answering. "Admiral, it is the size of Earth's moon." Silence fell on the bridge. Everyone stared at the screens. A ship, a vessel, the size of a moon. Nothing in the Galactic Concord was even close to that big. The largest Concord vessels were perhaps 10 kilometers long. This thing was 3,000 kilometers across. "That is impossible," someone whispered. But there it was, real, solid, waiting in the darkness like it had been waiting for a very long time. Ordered the ship to move closer still. As they approached, more details became visible. The surface of the massive vessel was covered in geometric patterns, strange shapes that seemed to shift and change when you looked at them directly. There were marks on the hull, scars, damage from weapons that had been fired millions of years ago. Someone had fought this ship, or this ship had fought someone. The battle must have been terrible beyond imagination. "I am detecting no life signs," reported. "No power signatures. It appears to be completely dormant." "Can you identify the design?" asked. "Does it match any known species?" Worked at his station for several minutes. When he looked up, his expression was confused. "Admiral, this makes no sense. The symbols on the hull, they are not alien. They are variations of ancient human writing systems. Sumerian, Sanskrit, something called Linear A that we never decoded, but merged together into something new." Felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "That is impossible. Humans were living in caves when this ship was built." "I know," said, "but the patterns are unmistakable. This ship has a connection to humanity. I do not understand how." made a decision. It was the kind of decision that would change history, though she did not know it yet. Prepare a shuttle, I am going over there. Her first officer, a woman named, stepped forward. Admiral, that is extremely dangerous. We do not know anything about that vessel. Which is exactly why I need to go, said. This is why we explore. This is why we are out here. Something that old, that big, with connections to human history. I am not going to sit on this ship and watch from a distance. The shuttle crossed the void between the ships, sat in the pilot's seat with beside her. Two security officers sat in the back, their weapons ready for anything. As the shuttle approached the massive hull, something happened. Lights flickered across the surface of the ancient vessel. After 2 million years of darkness, something was waking up. The geometric patterns began to glow with soft blue light. The shuttle's instruments went crazy with readings they could not interpret. It knows we are here, whispered. Then the message came. It came through channels that should not exist. It spoke directly to the neural implants that all humans used for communication. It bypassed every security system, every firewall, every protection. It simply arrived in their minds like a memory they had always had. The voice was not human, but it was not alien either. It was something older than both. Children, you have returned. The enemy sleeps. The time approaches. Remember what you were. His hands were shaking. She had explored the galaxy for 30 years. She had seen wonders that most humans could not imagine, but nothing had ever made her feel like this. Nothing had ever made her feel like she was standing at the edge of something vast and important. What does it mean? Asked. His voice was barely a whisper. What enemy? What were we supposed to remember? Did not answer. She was looking at the ancient ship, watching more lights come alive across its surface. Millions of lights, billions of them, like a city waking from a very long sleep. She thought about all the times the conquered species had looked at humans with those dismissing eyes. She thought about all the times they had called humanity young and insignificant. She was beginning to think they were wrong. She was beginning to think they had all been very, very wrong. We need to go inside, she said. We need to understand what this is. The shuttle found an opening in the hull. It was a docking bay, sized for vessels much larger than their tiny craft. As they entered, more lights came alive. Systems that had been dormant for longer than human civilization had existed were waking up. And somewhere in the depths of space, far beyond the galaxy's edge, something else stirred. Something that had been sleeping even longer than the ship. Something that would be very unhappy to learn that its old enemies had finally returned. But did not know that yet. She only knew that everything humanity believed about itself was about to change, and she was going to be the one to discover the truth. The shuttle landed, the doors opened, and Admiral Park stepped into a ship that would reshape the galaxy. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Admiral Park's report reached Earth within hours. Within days, every species in the galactic conquered knew about the discovery in the void. A ship the size of a moon, human writing on its hull, a message that spoke of enemies and memories. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. The galactic conquered called an emergency meeting. Species that had not spoken to each other in 10,000 years suddenly had much to discuss. The great halls of the conquered headquarters filled with alien beings of every shape and size. They whispered in corners. They exchanged worried glances. Something was very wrong. The oldest species in the galaxy broke their silence. The archivists, who had existed for 30 million years and recorded everything, came forward. The eternal chorus, beings of pure energy who communicated through light, gathered in swirling patterns. The stone minds, ancient artificial intelligences who had outlived the species that created them, sent their first message in 200,000 years. They all said the same thing. Humanity must leave the void immediately. Humanity must submit to protective quarantine. Humanity must not wake what sleeps. On Earth, President received their demands. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had led humanity through difficult times. She had negotiated with alien species who thought humans were beneath notice. She had always been patient, always been careful. But this time she said no. "We will not be quarantined," she announced to the conquered representatives. "We will not abandon our discovery. You have hidden something from us. You have lied to us. Now you will tell us the truth, or we will find it ourselves." The conquered representatives left without another word. Their silence was more frightening than any threat. While politicians argued, Dr. Hand prepared for the most important mission of her life. She was Earth's greatest physicist, a woman who had spent 40 years studying the nature of space and time. She had won every award science could offer, but she had always felt like something was missing, like there was a piece of the puzzle she could not find. Now she was going to the ancient ship. Now she was going to find answers. Her team arrived at the vessel Admiral Park had discovered. They called it Ancestor One now. The name felt right, though no one could explain why. Stood in the shuttle and watched the massive hull grow larger in the windows. It was beautiful in a strange way, elegant, powerful, old beyond imagination. "The lights have been spreading," reported Commander. He was the team's interface specialist, trained to connect with alien computer systems. "The ship seems to be waking up more every day, like it knows we are coming." Nodded, she had read Park's reports. The ship responded to human presence. It recognized them somehow. After 2 million years of sleep, it had felt their approach and begun to wake. What did that mean? What kind of technology could do such a thing? They docked and entered the ship. The corridors were enormous, built for beings larger than humans, but not aliens. The proportions were wrong for that. They were built for humans who wore armor, humans who carried weapons, humans who were taller and stronger than any who existed today. "The architecture is familiar," said as they walked. "It feels human, but more, like everything we build was a pale copy of this." Lee had joined the expedition. He walked beside, scanning everything with his instruments. "The writing on the walls confirms it. These are human languages, but older than anything in our records, older than anything should be." They found the archive chamber at the heart of the ship. It was a sphere half a kilometer across, filled with floating crystals that glowed with soft light. Each crystal contained information, histories, records, memories, the story of what humanity had been. Activated the interface. The ship welcomed her. It had been waiting so long. What she learned changed everything. Humanity did not evolve on Earth. They were not native to that small blue world. They were placed there, hidden there, their memories erased, their technology taken away, their connection to their true past cut forever. Why? Because they were being hunted. 2 million years ago, a war had burned across galaxies. Humanity had not been victims of this war. They had been weapons. They had been created by a coalition of desperate species to fight an enemy that could not be defeated any other way. The enemy was called the Hollow. They were not beings of matter. They were beings of hunger. They consumed consciousness itself, feeding on thoughts and minds and souls. The war had been terrible. Both sides suffered losses beyond counting. In the end, humanity had driven the Hollow back to the space between dimensions, but the cost was everything. The species that created humanity were gone. Most of humanity was gone. The survivors were broken, damaged, unable to continue. So they made a choice. They would hide, they would sleep, they would let their children forget. Maybe if enough time passed, the Hollow would never return. Maybe humanity could live in peace. The oldest species of the galactic conquered agreed to watch over them, to keep them contained, to make sure they never remembered, because if they remembered, the Hollow might feel it, the Hollow might wake. For 2 million years, the plan worked. Until Park flew into the void, stood in the archive chamber and felt tears running down her face. She thought about every time an alien had looked at humans with pity, every time they had been called young, every time they had been dismissed as newcomers. Humans were not young, they were ancient. They were weapons of a forgotten war, and they had been sleeping. Commander found the interface pods in another section of the ship. They were built for human neural implants, built to connect human minds directly to the ship's systems. He looked at them for a long time. "I can connect," he said. "The ship wants me to connect. It says I am crew." "It is too dangerous," one of the scientists warned. "We do not know what it will do to you." Smiled sadly. "We did not come here to be safe. We came here to find the truth." He lay down in the pod. The systems activated. His mind touched the mind of Ancestor 1. And the ship truly woke. Power flooded through corridors that had been dark for 2 million years. Engines that dwarfed anything the Conquered had ever built began to warm. Weapon systems that could crack planets checked their targeting. The ship remembered what it was. It remembered what it was for. Spoke with a voice that was his own and not his own. The ship spoke through him. "There are more of us, thousands more, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for human hands to wake them. We are the Ancestor Fleet. We were built to protect. We were built to fight. The children have returned and we are ready to serve." Across the galaxy, in hidden places no one had ever found, other ships began to stir. In nebulae, in asteroid fields, in the cores of gas giants. Thousands of vessels, each one the size of a world, each one carrying weapons and factories and cities. Humanity's inheritance was waking up. And in the darkness between galaxies, in spaces that should not exist, something felt it. Something old, something hungry, something that had been waiting just as long. The Hollow turned their attention toward a small galaxy they had almost forgotten. They felt the familiar signature of their ancient enemy. The children had remembered. The war was about to begin again. On Ancestor 1, Han stood among floating crystals of ancient knowledge and understood what was coming. She understood what humanity had been, what they had been made for. "We need to tell everyone," she said. "Earth, the colonies, every human alive, they need to know what we are." Nodded, and the Conquered, "They kept this from us. They lied to us for millions of years." Thought about the old species who had watched over sleeping humanity. Had they been jailers or protectors? Had they been afraid of what humans could do or afraid of what would come for them? Maybe both. "We tell them too," she said finally. "We tell everyone. The time for secrets is over." She looked at the walls covered in ancient human writing. She thought about the ships waking across the galaxy. She thought about the enemy that was coming. Humanity had forgot who they were. Now they would remember. And the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since Park first entered the void. 6 months of revelations. 6 months of change. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been. Humanity had awakened 47 ancestor vessels. Each one was a mobile world. The smallest was twice the size of Mars. The largest was so big that it had its own weather systems inside its hull. They were cities and shipyards and weapons platforms all in one. They were everything humanity had lost. Captain stood on the bridge of Ancestor 12. The ship had another name in the old human language, Morning Star. It suited the vessel somehow, a light against the darkness. Was young for a captain, only 35 years old, but she had proven herself in the months since the awakening. She understood the old ships in a way that surprised even her. When she walked their corridors, she felt like she was coming home. Today, she was leading the first expedition beyond the galaxy's edge. The coordinates were burned into every ancestor ship's navigation system, a location in the void between galaxies where something important had happened long ago. The old records were not clear about what, but they all pointed to the same place. Morning Star jumped through space in ways the Conquered had never imagined. The journey that should have taken centuries was over in hours. They emerged in the darkness between galaxies, far from any star. And they found a graveyard. Millions of destroyed vessels floated in the void. Human ships and enemy ships locked together in death. The battle that happened here must have been beyond imagination. Two great fleets had met in this place and destroyed each other almost completely. "The final battle," whispered, "this is where we stop them." Her crew was silent. They looked at the wreckage of ships that made the morning star seem small. They looked at the remains of an enemy they were only beginning to understand. The hollow ships were strange. They did not look like ships at all. They were geometric shapes that hurt the eyes to look at, triangles that had too many sides, spheres that seemed to exist in more dimensions than three. They were frozen now, dead, but even in death they felt wrong. "I am detecting something," reported the sensor officer. His voice was shaking. "One of the enemy vessels, it is not completely dead." Felt ice in her blood. "Show me." On the screen, a single hollow scout appeared. It was damaged badly. Most of its structure was destroyed, but something still flickered in its core. Something still thought. Something still watched. The scout detected them at the same moment. For a long second, nothing happened. The human ship and the enemy ship looked at each other across 2 million years of silence. Then the scout began to transmit. Not to them, to somewhere else, to the darkness beyond the galaxy, to wherever its kind had retreated so long ago. "They live, the builders live, wake the swarm. Did not hesitate, destroy it now." Morning Star's weapons activated. Power that could shatter moons focused on the tiny scout. It vanished in a flash of light that briefly stars. But the message had already been sent. "We need to return home," said. "We need to warn everyone." The Morning Star turned and jumped back toward the galaxy. Behind them, in the infinite darkness between galaxies, something began to stir. Something vast. Something hungry. The Hollow were waking up. Back in the galaxy, the Galactic Concord was falling apart. The old alliance could not survive the truth about humanity. Some species wanted humans destroyed before the enemy returned. Others wanted to ally with them, to stand behind the power of the ancestor fleet. A few species celebrated openly. For millions of years, the elder races had dominated everyone through their superior technology. Now that advantage was gone. The Preservation Alliance formed first. Humanity led it, along with 300 species who wanted to fight. They believed that if the Hollow returned, only the ancestor fleet could stop them. Better to stand with humans than to stand alone. The Isolation Pact formed next. The oldest species retreated to fortified systems. They believed humanity's awakening had doomed the galaxy. They would wait in their strongholds for the end to come. On Earth, Dr. Han worked without rest. She had decoded the historical archives from Ancestor 1. She understood now what the Hollow truly were. They were not life as humans understood it. They existed in the spaces between dimensions, in realms where normal physics did not apply. They fed on consciousness itself. When they consumed a mind, that mind did not simply die. It was absorbed, digested, added to the Hollow's endless hunger. Entire civilizations had been eaten. Billions of minds screaming forever inside the enemy's impossible geometry. The species that created humanity had done so out of desperation. They engineered humans specifically to fight the Hollow. Human minds worked differently. Human consciousness was structured in ways that the Hollow found difficult to consume. Humans could resist them. Humans could hurt them. Humans were weapons. But they were more than that too. They had been given the capacity to feel, to love, to hope. They were weapons that could choose not to fight, weapons that could build instead of destroy. Their creators had hoped that if the war ever ended, humanity could become something more than what they were made for. They had not counted on humanity forgetting everything. President called an emergency session of all human governments. The leaders of 12 star systems gathered to hear what she had to say. "The enemy is coming," she told them. "We do not know when, we do not know how many, but they are coming, and we need to decide what we are going to do." The debate was fierce. Some wanted to hide, some wanted to run, some wanted to destroy the ancestor ships and hope the Hollow would leave humanity alone. Fleet Admiral O spoke last. He was an old soldier, gray-haired, and he had spent his life defending humanity against threats that seemed impossible to survive. Now he commanded the combined human fleet from Ancestor Prime, the largest of all the awakened vessels. "We cannot hide," he said. "The Hollow know we exist. They will hunt us no matter where we go. We cannot run because there is nowhere to run. And we cannot abandon the ancestor ships because they are the only thing that can protect us." He stood and looked at every leader in the room. "Our ancestors were made for war. They did not ask for it. They did not want it. But they fought anyway because something had to. Now it is our turn. We can honor their sacrifice by standing and fighting, or we can let everything they died for mean nothing." The vote was close, but in the end humanity chose to fight. Captain returned with news of the enemy scout. She told them about the graveyard between galaxies. She told them about the message that had been sent. "The Hollow are coming," she said. "I do not know when, but they are coming." President addressed the galaxy. Her message was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language. "We did not ask for this inheritance. We do not want war, but we remember now what we were made for. If the Hollow returns, we will stand, and we will not stand alone. Any species that wishes to survive may stand with us. We will protect the small. We will defend the weak. This is what we were made for. This is what we choose to be." Across the galaxy, species watched the message. Some dismissed it, some feared it, but many felt something stir inside them, something like hope. Humanity was no longer the young species that everyone ignored. They were ancient, they were powerful, and they were offering to protect anyone who needed protecting. The Preservation Alliance grew. 300 species became 400, then 500. Ships gathered around the ancestor vessels. Warriors trained alongside human soldiers. Scientists shared knowledge that had been hidden for. The galaxy was preparing for war. And in the darkness between dimensions, the Hollow were preparing too. Their swarm was vast beyond counting. Their hunger was infinite. They remembered the builders who had hurt them so badly. They remembered, and they were coming to finish what they started. The war for everything was about to begin. 2 years had passed since humanity found Ancestor 1. The galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Galactic Concord was gone. 6 million years of peace ended not with war but with choice. Species chose their sides. The Preservation Alliance grew stronger every day, united around humanity and the Ancestor fleet. The Isolation Pact grew smaller, the oldest species hiding in their fortresses, waiting for the end. Fleet Admiral O stood on the bridge of Ancestor Prime and looked at the stars. His ship was a sphere of living metal 60,000 kilometers across. It contained cities, factories, shipyards, weapons that could make stars grow dim. His crew numbered in the billions. His smallest escort ships were the size of continents. He had never wanted this command. He was a simple soldier who had spent his life doing his duty. Now he held more power than any human in history, more power than most species in the galaxy combined. It terrified him, but he did not show it. A good commander never showed fear. "Report," he said. His first officer, a woman named, checked her screens. "The fleet is at full readiness. 400 ancestor vessels, 3,000 allied ships from the Preservation Alliance, 18 trillion beings ready to fight." 18 trillion. The number was too big to comprehend. More people than had ever existed in human history, all depending on him to lead them. Any sign of the enemy? Not yet, but the sensor networks are detecting disturbances at the galaxy's edge. Space is becoming unstable. We believe they are coming soon. Soon, such a small word for such a terrible thing. Admiral Park commanded her own ancestor vessel now. She had named it Unbroken Dawn. It was smaller than Prime, only 2,000 kilometers across, but it was fast and deadly. She had spent 2 years learning its systems, understanding its weapons, becoming one with the ship that had changed her life. She would lead the defense of the void, the place where everything began, the place where the Hollow would likely strike first. Her crew trusted her completely. She had been the first, the one who found Ancestor 1, the one who opened the door to humanity's past. Now she would be among the first to face humanity's greatest enemy. She was ready, or at least she told herself she was. Commander remained aboard Ancestor 1. His connection with the ship had grown deeper over 2 years. He spent hours in the interface pods, his mind spread across the vessel's systems. He saw things no human had ever seen. He understood things no human had ever understood. The ships were not just machines. They were alive in ways that easy explanation. They thought, they felt, they remembered. They had been alone for 2 million years waiting for humans to return. Now they were happy. They were ready to serve. But they were also afraid. Felt their fear through the connection. They remembered the Hollow. They remembered what it felt like to fight an enemy that could not truly be killed. An enemy that kept coming no matter how many you destroyed. An enemy that consumed everything it touched. The Hollow arrived on a Tuesday. It was a strange thing later to remember what day it was. Such a human detail in the face of something so vast. They emerged from tears in space itself. Reality ripped open in 1,000 places across the galaxy's edge. And from those tears, they poured like a flood of darkness. They were not ships. They were geometries of hunger given form. They were equations that consumed light. They were angles that should not exist, shapes that hurt the mind to look upon. Where they passed, stars flickered and died. Planets were reduced to mathematical abstractions and devoured. The first battle happened at the void. Admiral Park led the defense, 20 ancestor vessels against the first wave of the Hollow swarm. The fighting was unlike anything in history. Ancestor weapons fired in spectrums that had no names. They burned through dimensional barriers. They tore holes in the fabric of reality. The Hollow screamed in frequencies that drove lesser beings mad. Reality itself became a battlefield. Ships moved in ways that physics. Time became inconsistent. Cause and effect switched places. Soldiers fired weapons that had not yet been invented. They dodged attacks that had already hit them. Park stood on her bridge and commanded with a voice of iron. She had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. She had studied every record of the First War. She had learned every tactic that worked, every strategy that failed. Focus fire on the large one, she ordered. The one shaped like a twisted star. It is coordinating the others. Unbroken Dawn and 3 other ancestors concentrated their weapons. The Hollow commander exploded in a burst of impossible colors. The swarm faltered, confused. Now push them back. Do not let them recover. The human fleet surged forward. For a moment it looked like victory might be possible. The Hollow fell back, their formation broken. Then reinforcements arrived. Millions of them, pouring through the tears in space, an endless flood of geometric nightmares. "We cannot hold," someone said. "We will hold," Park replied. "This is what we were made for." The battle raged for 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of watching friends die. 3 days of holding a line that should have been impossible to hold. Commander interfaced completely with Ancestor 1. His consciousness spread across the vessel's systems until he was no longer sure where he ended and the ship began. He saw the battle as mathematics, as probabilities, as beautiful, terrible equations of survival. He found patterns in the Hollow's movements, ways to predict where they would strike. He shared this knowledge with the fleet. Ships moved to intercept attacks before they happened, weapons fired at enemies that had not yet arrived. The Hollow noticed. They tried to consume him, to reach through the neural link and devour his mind. But human consciousness was built to resist them. He pushed back. He held on. "You cannot have me," he said through the ship's external speakers, his voice echoing across the void. "You cannot have any of us, not anymore." On the third day, the Hollow retreated. Humanity had won, but the cost was terrible. 3 ancestor vessels destroyed, 7 billion lives lost, allies from the Preservation Alliance who had stood with them gone forever. And this was only the first battle. The scouts they had destroyed were merely the vanguard. The true swarm was still coming. Fleet Admiral O surveyed the damage from Ancestor Prime. His face was gray with exhaustion. He had not slept in 3 days. "How long until they return?" he asked. "Unknown," replied. "Days, weeks, maybe months. They are regrouping, building their strength." "Then we do the same." He turned to face his bridge crew. "Send a message to all ships. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we held. Tell them we won." He paused. "And tell them to prepare, because this is only the beginning." Across the galaxy the message spread. Humanity had faced the Hollow. Humanity had won. It was not an easy victory. It was not a clean victory, but it was a victory. For the first time in 2 million years, someone had proven that the Hollow could be stopped. Hope spread through the Preservation Alliance. More species joined. More ships arrived. The galaxy was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could survive. But in the darkness between dimensions, the Hollow were not discouraged. They were angry, they were hungry, and they were patient. They had waited 2 million years. They could wait a little longer. The true war was just beginning. 5 years of war. The galaxy burned. 200 species were gone, not just dead, erased. Their consciousness consumed so completely that the universe no longer remembered they had ever existed. No records, no memories, no echoes, just emptiness where civilizations had been. The Preservation Alliance had held, but barely. Half the ancestor fleet was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The survivors fought on, but everyone knew the truth. They were losing. Dr. Hen had not slept in months. She lived in the archives of Ancestor Prime now, searching through records that were millions of years old. She was looking for something, a weapon, a solution, anything that could turn the tide. She found it on a night when exhaustion had pushed her past the point of rational thought. Deep in the oldest archives, in records that had been locked away and forgotten, she discovered the silence. It was not a weapon exactly, it was a choice. The silence existed outside normal space, in the realm where the Hollow originated. It was a pattern that, once activated, would close the doorway between dimensions forever. No more Hollow could ever enter normal space. The ones already here would be cut off from their source of power. They would weaken and die. But there was a cost. To carry the silence to its destination required a consciousness, a mind to navigate the impossible spaces between dimensions, and that mind would be erased, not killed. Erased. It would cease to exist so completely that even memory of it would fade. The person who carried the silence would be forgotten by everyone who ever knew them. This was why humanity's ancestors had not used it. The cost was too high. They believed they could win another way. They had been wrong. Brought her discovery to Fleet Admiral O. He read the records in silence. His face showed nothing. "Can we build this?" he asked. "The ancestor ships already have the technology. It has been waiting for 2 million years. All we need is someone to carry it. Someone who will be completely erased." "Yes." O closed his eyes. He thought about everyone who had died in 5 years of war. He thought about everyone who would die if the war continued. He thought about the species that had already been consumed, forgotten by a universe that no longer knew they had existed. "We need to tell the others," he said finally. The debate was fierce and terrible. Some said they should keep fighting. Surely there was another way. Some said they should use criminals, people who deserved to be forgotten. Some said they should ask for volunteers and let chance decide. Admiral Park listened to the arguments. Then she stood. "I will do it," she said. The room went silent. "Admiral," someone started. "I have commanded from the first day. I found Ancestor 1. I opened the door to all of this. It is fitting that I be the one to close it. But you will be forgotten. Everyone who ever knew you will lose their memories of you. Your family, your friends, your crew. It will be as if you never existed." Park smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was peace in it too. "I have thought about this for a long time. I have no family left. My parents died before the war. I never had children. My friends are mostly gone, killed in battles I could not prevent." She looked around the room at the faces of people she had fought beside for 5 years. "I was a girl from who wanted to see the stars. I have seen more than I ever dreamed. This is not a sacrifice. It is a gift. I get to end this. I get to save everyone. How many people can say that?" They tried to talk her out of it. For hours they tried. But she had made her decision and nothing could change it. The final battle took place at the galaxy's core. The Hollow had concentrated their full swarm there. 1 trillion geometric nightmares gathered around the supermassive black hole at the center of everything. They were preparing something. No one knew what, but it would not be good. 400 ancestor vessels answered the call. Every ship that could still fight. Every warrior who could still hold a weapon. The Preservation Alliance committed everything. The fighting was beyond description. Entire solar systems were used as ammunition. Black holes were deployed as shields. Time became inconsistent. History rewrote itself moment by moment. Ships existed in multiple states at once, both destroyed and fighting. Fleet Admiral O commanded from Ancestor Prime. His voice never wavered, even when impossible losses filled his screens. He gave orders. He moved ships. He did everything a commander could do. But he knew the truth. They could not win this way. There were too many Hollow. No matter how many they destroyed, more kept coming. Admiral Park piloted a small craft toward the center of the swarm. It was tiny compared to the ancestor ships, tiny compared to the Hollow nightmares that surrounded it, but it carried the silence. The Hollow noticed her. They tried to stop her. They threw everything they had at her small ship, but the ancestor fleet formed a wall around her. Ships sacrificed themselves so she could continue. Warriors died so she could fly a little further. Commander, still connected to Ancestor 1, reached out to her through the neural link. "You do not have to do this," he said. "Yes, I do, and you know it. We could find another way." "There is no other way. There never was." She was approaching the dimensional rift now, the place where the Hollow poured into normal space. It was a wound in reality itself, bleeding darkness and hunger. "When I am gone, you will not remember me. No one will, but I need you to remember something else. Can you do that?" "What?" "Remember that someone loved this galaxy enough to give up everything for it. Remember that humans can choose to be more than what they were made for. Can you remember that?" "I can try." "Good, that is all I ask." She broadcast a final message. It went to every ship in the fleet, to every world in the Preservation Alliance, to every being who could hear. "I was a girl from who wanted to see the stars. I have seen more than I ever dreamed. This is not a sacrifice. It is a gift. Tell them I was human. Tell them we protected the small and the forgotten and the afraid. Tell them we remembered how to be what we were made to be." She flew into the rift. She activated the silence. The universe screamed. The rift closed. It simply stopped existing, like a wound healing in an instant. Every hollow in the galaxy ceased at the same moment. They did not die. They were erased, unmade, returned to the nothing they came from. The war was over. In the aftermath, no one could remember who had ended it. They knew someone had carried the silence. They knew someone had sacrificed themselves, but the memory was gone. The name was gone. Everything was gone. Commander felt empty inside. He knew he had lost something important. He just could not remember what it was. But he remembered her last words. He did not know who had spoken them, but he remembered them. Tell them we remembered how to be, what we were made to be. The surviving species looked upon humanity with new eyes. 400 ancestor vessels remained. Humanity could rule the galaxy absolutely. No force could oppose them. Fleet Admiral O addressed the galaxy from Ancestor Prime. We were made to protect, not to conquer, not to rule. The ancestor vessels will return to sleep, waiting only if darkness comes again. We will live among you as equals, as neighbors, as friends. We remember what we were, but we choose what we will become. The ships went dark. One by one they drifted to hidden places across the galaxy. Their crews returned to ordinary lives, their weapons cooled, their purposes fulfilled. Humanity chose peace. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy finally understood why the oldest species had feared humanity so deeply. Not because of what humans could destroy, because of what they chose not to. 100 years later, a child named visited a museum on old Earth. In the central hall stood a statue of an unknown woman in an admiral's uniform. No one knew who she was, but they knew she had saved the galaxy. The inscription read, "We were made for war, we chose peace. We were made to destroy, we chose to protect. We were made to be weapons, we became human instead." Asked her grandmother what it meant. Her grandmother, who had once served aboard an ancestor ship, though she could not remember much about it, smiled. "It means we learned what we were always supposed to be, not the galaxy's soldiers, not its rulers." She looked up at the stars, visible through the museum's glass ceiling. Its family looked at the statue of the unknown woman. She felt something strange, like a memory that was not quite there, like gratitude for someone she could not name. "Do you think she was happy?" asked whoever she was. Her grandmother thought about it for a long moment. "I think she saw the stars. I think she loved them. And I think in the end she gave them to all of us." They stood together in the museum, looking at a statue of someone forgotten. And somewhere, in the spaces between memory and forgetting, something that had once been Admiral Park smiled. She had wanted to see the stars. She had seen them all. And she had saved every single one.